Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss more Brexit hypocrisy as Boris Johnson appoints a Brexit minister who isn't even elected. He has therefore put in place an unelected bureaucrat who will be deciding government policy. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, Boris Johnson has appointed David Frost, the civil servant who headed up the UK's Brexit negotiations over the last year, to the position of Brexit minister. The aim is to take over from Michael Gove, who, I don't know whether he's pleased about this or not. I'm guessing he is. I'm guessing he's pretty tired of doing any actual work. And there's a lot of work to be done on the Northern Ireland Protocol, to say nothing of everything else to do with Brexit now. And remember that Boris Johnson disbanded this ministerial position last year so that he could claim he'd got Brexit done. He forbade any officials to use the term Brexit. You just weren't allowed if you're a civil servant. Michael Gove was made de facto Brexit minister, but without the title. Again, to hide the fact that there was a Brexit minister. You know, to hide the fact that Brexit was very far from being done. Michael Gove's official title was, and still is, Minister for the Cabinet Office and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. But those roles don't involve any actual work. So he could easily take the job of Brexit Minister without drawing attention to the fact that there was a Brexit Minister. And there are a couple of major hypocrisies in this appointment, as well as a serious democratic question. Now, the first hypocrisy is in Brexiteers like Boris Johnson spending ages banging on about unelected bureaucrats in the EU. Always those opposed to the European project would complain about these unelected bureaucrats deciding policy. Odd that nobody was ever able to name such an unelected bureaucrat and the policy they decided. I've asked the question of Brexit supporters each time, and whenever you get an answer, it's always someone who was actually elected. Oh, well, this person, yeah, they were elected by a lot of people. Problem for people opposed to the EU, the vast majority don't actually know anything about it. They have no interest in learning anything about it, and yet they are so certain they're against it. The fact is that EU policies are not decided by unelected bureaucrats, but UK ones are. Generally speaking, there should be very few ministers in the British government that aren't elected. We don't elect our government directly, and I always have to be a little bit pedantic when people talk about us electing this government. We didn't elect this government. You never elect a government. The public do not vote for the Prime Minister and do not vote for individual ministers. Now, this is quite normal in parliamentary democracy. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not in itself undemocratic, because the way it works is the vast majority of us vote for a party on the understanding that if that party wins a majority of seats, the leader of that party will become Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is elected. The Prime Minister will then be invited to form a government, and they have carte blanche to appoint whomever they wish to head up government departments. But the understanding, the unwritten rule, and it is an unwritten rule, is that the Prime Minister will appoint elected MPs to the role. Sure, there's the odd one that can't be elected. There are actually members of the government that can't be elected. For example, the leader of the House of Lords. Obviously, the answer to that is not to have an unelected chamber in Parliament. But as things stand, some positions relate to cooperation between the House of Commons, which is elected, and the House of Lords, which is not. But Boris Johnson had already padded out some ministerial positions with people who are not elected, and in roles that have got nothing to do with the Lords as well. If you look down at the full list of government ministers, there's quite a few. I'm not talking about cabinet ministers, full list of ministers. Boris Johnson had already made 20 unelected people ministers where the role had no requirements for such an appointment. Like, for example, there's the Lord Advocate for Scotland. Now, that requires a certain legal expertise. So, you know, that's fine. You won't always get an MP that has that degree of legal expertise. So that's unelected. That's okay. And that's a legal advice position anyway. Or you can have positions within the House of Lords, which, as I say, have to go to unelected people because the Lords are unelected. But you take those out of it, and there were still 20 positions that could and should have gone to MPs, Conservative MPs, it's a Conservative government, but instead have gone to those where there is no public accountability at the ballot box. None at all. If the public don't think they're doing a good enough job, there is literally nothing they can do about it, even at a general election. And now there's going to be a 21st. Absolutely disgraceful that these people attack the EU for doing something which is not even true. And yet, and what makes it even worse is they are committing the same action themselves. The second aspect of hypocrisy is that Boris Johnson stood on a platform which had only 3 words: get Brexit done. People voted for this. The Conservatives did not choose this slogan idly. They knew what they were doing. They always do. The Conservatives, unlike other parties, always take elections seriously and always get the best people to inform strategy. It's the only time they ever actually listen to experts. There were a significant number of people who voted Conservative in 2019, not because they wanted to leave the EU necessarily, though many did, but because they wanted the process over. Even those who would have liked another referendum to be asked again and would have voted Remain this time, didn't realising that that was an actual option, just voted for it to be over one way or another. They were sick of it, they wanted to move on, so they voted Conservative. And yet Brexit isn't over. Could have been if people hadn't voted Conservative. So Johnson has betrayed that vote. Not only is Brexit not done, it will never be done. Never. The deal already included a dozen new negotiations a year, and that doesn't even include the negotiations now needed to try and lessen the impact of the disastrous consequences of Brexit that people, and maybe even government ministers, were simply not expecting. In fact, so much is Brexit not done that Boris Johnson has given up the pretense of not having an actual Brexit minister and appointed one again. And this isn't an appointment to sort out a few details over the next few months. This is a permanent position now. There's a Brexit minister again, or there's going to be, which means Labour will need to appoint a shadow Brexit minister again. I wonder who Starmer will pick for that role. That could be interesting in how he views Labour's long-term Brexit strategy. Because I really don't know what it is at the moment, because it's locked in a box right now. Obviously the strategy at the moment is to try not to talk about Brexit, which I've already said, what? But obviously there has to be a long-term one. Now, if he appoints a Lexiteer, it will give the impression that he intends to keep Labour's position on Brexit low-key. If he appoints a Europhile, it might suggest that the silence right now is only intended to be temporary. So I'll be interested in that appointment. But anyway, back to the hypocrisy. So the lay of the land is that come 2024, Brexit will still be going on. Whoever is leading the Conservatives at the time will probably make Brexit their main plank again, with no shame for the fact that they will have broken their main Brexit promise from 2019. They'll doubtless talk about the importance of trusting the Tories for another 5 years. They'll say that the Brexit dividends, which have been as rare as hen's teeth, are just around the corner. How, in 2026, all the bad things will go away. Don't let Labour in because they'll just wreck it all. We're so close. All that bollocks. I just hope that the people don't fall for it this time, like they did in 2015, 2017 and 2019. My hopes aren't high. Finally, there's democratic questions here. So David Frost will be Boris Johnson's 21st ministerial appointment that could and should have been given to an MP. I mean, he has enough of them, for goodness sake. And this one is a senior position. The other 20 unelected positions are at least junior ministers, though they are still ministers, and that means they still decide policy, and they still have control over public funds. But Frost is supposed to be attending cabinet as part of his role. And as Brexit feeds into everything, that means that this unelected bureaucrat will be involved in discussions in all areas of British government policy on the same platform as Secretaries of State, which is an absolute outrage. And the other thing to consider is this. Secretaries of State are supposed to be accountable to Parliament. They have to stand up and they have to give speeches in the House of Commons where they can then be cross-examined effectively, or at least ask questions, by MPs on their own side, MPs on the opposition side. David Frost is not an MP. He won't be going to the House of Commons. He won't be making speeches. And therefore he won't be taking questions. There's no accountability in Parliament unless he attends a select committee hearing now and then, but there is no actual accountability in the normal parliamentary process. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.